I know. It's the Real Estate Pessimist podcast. And you'd think that we have a pessimistic story for you. We do have a story of disaster. Mike and Don Miller bought a fantastic restaurant and bar on Fort Myers Beach, which was completely destroyed 3 months after they bought it. But they didn't stop there because they're not pessimists and neither are we. They rebuilt, and their story is so inspiring how locals can impact where they are in real and practical ways. Please join us on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast as we interview non-pessimists, Mike and Don Miller, and their story of how they are rebuilding, and hope it inspires you too. Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist podcast. My name is Eric Stenbakken. I'm one of your co-hosts. I invest in real estate in long-term, single-family, and vacation rental homes. And I'm joined today with Kristi Candle. We got guests. We're going to get to them in just a second. Kristi, how are things? What is up? And what do you have to do that has to do with this podcast and these guests? This is right up your alley.
Yes, it is. Hey, I'm Kristi Candle. I'm a real estate developer, investor, and I teach locals how to become developers in their own backyard. And today's guests are from my community in Florida. And a little bit of background on this is that we live in Fort Myers Beach, Florida. And in September of 22, we got annihilated by Hurricane Ian. And it was quite the experience. And for everyone who was rebuilding and coming back, it was just a whole process and a journey of finding the hope and the inspiration and being resilient. And the guests we have on today were a huge part of that for helping the whole community come together and go, wait, the locals are rebuilding the icon on the beach. You know, we can keep putting one foot in front of another too. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our guests, Mike and Don. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did some reading about you guys. Mike and Dawn Miller. Sounds like you guys kind of had some Midwest manufacturing experience, and Dawn has got history way back to Fort Myers Beach and kind of roped you into this. Mike, how did you all land where you are? What's the story on that?
So I was coming here since I was a child, but on my 25th birthday, I said I'm taking him to my two favorite places. So Fort Myers Beach, and then we went to Disney. So we had a week-long vacation, and we were here, and he fell in love like I did. So then we started bringing our kids down once we had them, and we vacationed here often. All over the island, I might add, not just in one hotel. We stayed everywhere.
And did you kind of know from the beginning that, hey, we're going to be the snowbirds that do buy the place and come down? Or at what point did that become like, hey, we might try this?
Well, in 2018, we ended up coming down here just looking around. We weren't ready to buy yet. And one thing led to another. We looked at, I believe, 10 homes, came down, and next thing you know, they're like, hey, why don't you take a look at this other home that just got built, and it's on the bay. And that pretty much sold us the minute we pulled up in the driveway.
Tell us a little bit about your real estate background and how that played into your, was it slow or sudden transition into Fort Myers Beach?
Well, it started way back in the early 90s. I actually bought and sold used copiers to third world countries for 27 years. And what happened from the time my first building I purchased was in 1996. Matter of fact, it's in Columbus, Ohio. And I got a bunch of real estate in Columbus, Ohio. I was listening to your podcast, and it's all, I don't have any residential. It's all commercial, bulk warehouse. And I just I diversified it into commercial real estate as my business grew, because I just knew that's going to be a long-term investment. So in 18, I pretty much closed down the used copier business due to the fact that a lot of the Indians and the Chinese were coming in, sending their cousins, uncles, and brothers in and buying from where we buy, and there was no money in the business anymore. We decided to semi-retire. We decided, hey, let's go down to Fort Myers Beach, the place we love. And one thing led to another. We did that in 18. We were down here all during COVID. We went back up north for about 3 months. We lasted 3 weeks. We said, let's just sell the house up here. What in the heck are we doing up here? Let's go back to paradise.
Okay, so you came down, and what did you buy in Fort Myers Beach? What's your investment spectrum look like down there?
Well, we started out, we bought the original beached whale. It's now called the Whale. And we bought that 3.5 months before Hurricane Ian destroyed it.
Well, so what is the Whale? Tell our listeners about what that is.
No, the Whale is a restaurant bar on the north end of Fort Myers Beach. It's right catty corner to the newly constructed Margaritaville. And it was an icon for many, many years on this island, probably built in the early to mid 60s. And then it's changed hands a few times. We actually purchased it from Doc Ford's restaurant and bar. They wanted to go in a different direction. And so that it was never actually on the market. It was just a word of mouth type thing.
Wow. And so you bought this and it was immediate success. It was just bliss. Because I've heard this on podcasts. It's just you buy something and then it's just all the money rolls in. How'd that work out?
Well, it worked out great. I've lost a lot of weight because my wallet has depleted. But really, we bought it out of season. We probably spent $150,000 in 3 months fixing the building up, getting ready to paint the exterior. We redid the inside, hired a new chef, really got it going. And then season starts around October 1st. And just before then, Hurricane Ian wiped it out.
Now, I've seen pictures. And for those who aren't seeing the pictures, because we don't have them on, it's just pictures of us right now. Can you give us a word picture of when you say wiped it out? People might be picturing stained drywall. Maybe you've got to mop the floor a little bit. What did Fort Myers Beach look like? And the whale, specifically, when Ian was done, what did that look like?
Well, I will start by saying first, I saw it on the news before the whale was actually on the news, and I saw it the day after Ian. So I knew it was destroyed. So we had 2 additions on the building. One whole side of the building was gone. The front deck was gone, and the rest of the building just kind of sunk right into itself. And a lot of the stuff inside the building had gone down the road. All of our liquor was scattered everywhere. The kitchen equipment was everywhere. We had inches of sand all over the island. It almost looked like a bomb had gone off.
Also, what you've got is the neighboring properties, like the Cottage Bar, a very famous bar that's coming back. The Beacon Hotel was across the street. They were actually on the beach, and we're just right across the street. Basically, their buildings probably wiped out 90% of ours. They were nothing but sticks when it was done. And the whale was surprisingly built, and I couldn't believe it. It was built so long ago. They didn't use the traditional nails. It was used those little spikes, the angles in the old days. We saw a bunch of that was holding that building. And that was the part that actually survived. The new additions that were put on, they weren't even there. They were gone.
Wow. So you went from, we're just about ready to launch this thing. Business is just about to start up. Mm-hmm. You're getting in this place for the journey, and you see it literally on the news. Like, you don't even see it yourself. You see it on the news, and they're like, probably some sort of narration, like, look at this devastation, those poor owners. And you're like, yep, that's us.
Like, wait, that's me. What the heck?
So structurally, it's destruction. What emotionally is happening? What kind of discussions are you having after you see those images on TV?
Well, I rode the storm out, and so I was there the next morning before anyone could get on. And me and my GM, we stayed at my house. But when we went down there, it was just heartbreaking. And at the end of the day, when Dawn came down and saw the facility, she's like, all right, let's get ready to do this. And I was like, yes, let's get ready to sell this place. I'm done. And she looked at me and said, no. She goes, I've fallen in love with this place. By God, we're rebuilding. That was the end of the conversation.
So that not a lot of discussion there, but there's something really interesting that happened right there. And I think this is an important part of your story, and it can be for others. A lot of real estate investors talk about just being dispassionate. It's just about the money. It's the math. It's the deal. It either works, or it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, we're out of here. But it sounds like you all were invested in a different way in Fort Myers Beach and in the community and in that business. Where did that come from, and how did that help shape what you did in the process of rebuilding?
So I'll start by saying that I knew I had fallen in love with the whale, and I certainly love the island, but Mike and I are both very resilient. And after the storm, and I saw just the big need for people to step up and make bold decisions, I knew that was going to be us. So we were the first ones to make the decision. We're rebuilding, and we're going to make it better than ever. So it came after the storm, really.
And one of the things too is when, like you had just mentioned, was, when you do real estate, if the numbers don't work, this, and this, we're done. I'm not going to buy it. That's the way my mentality has always been in Ohio, and even with our 2 manufacturing plants in Tennessee, is that, the numbers don't work. If I don't get a good deal, I'm not interested. we come down here, we did get a good deal on the beached whale. But then again, Hurricane Ian took it, and Don had really fallen in love with this place, and so have I, for all the hard work we did of getting it fixed up. And just because I'm the investor. I mean, I was underneath this building helping to pull out over 100 trash bags of garbage underneath this building, all kinds of stuff before Hurricane Ian destroyed it.
Could have just left it there and let Ian take
Take
that
it
job
too.
on.
Hey, can we talk business for a second? If you've been flipping houses or running short-term rentals, you already know how to hustle. You know how to spot opportunity, add value, and make a property work harder. But if we're being honest, flipping gets exhausting, and short-term rentals are definitely not passive. So what's next? For a lot of people I work with, the answer is real estate development. I'm talking about turning a vacant lot into a quadplex, or bringing a rundown building back to life as a mixed-use space. I'm Kristi Candle, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career, and now I host the Local Real Estate Developer podcast to help locals like you do the same. We pull back the curtain and show you what it takes to go from flipper or host to local developer. If you're ready to build something bigger, this podcast is for you. Check out the Local Real Estate Developer podcast on all platforms. And, something I want to kind of debunk as well, especially after the Maui fires, the Palisade fires, and people are like, that's why you have insurance. It takes care of it. Do you maybe want to touch a little bit on that and what actually happens in the reality of insurance?
Oh yeah, the reality insurance is sometimes it's better off not to have. And even though we had paid cash for the property, we still had insurance. We had hurricane, we had wind, and we had not homers, we had general liability insurance. The regular insurance basically walked away. It's flood and wind, and they just dictate what they want to pay you. And for our home, we're suing the wind policy now, but for the whale, they basically maxed out the claims of about $1.5 million. It seems like a lot of money, but not when you have to now bring this thing from a 1960s to current code and everything else. We're going to be tipping $7.5 to $8 million on this bill.
Wow. So as this is happening, Kristi, this is a question for you and for the Millers. Typically, we may think about this as like, well, it's just a matter of putting up the framing, right? Okay, we'll put up the framing and we'll just put in the new electricity. But when we've got a huge disaster like this, whether they're wildfires or whether there are hurricanes, it's not like you just walk over and plug in your building's power to the existing infrastructure. Tell us a little bit about how that process worked, how fast, how slow, how easy, how hard it is for things like infrastructure and just the overall, like, could you just drive, a semi and unload the 2x4s the week after this? What is that process after a disaster like that? How does that go?
I'll let you guys take this, but let's just say I biked in 3 days after, and it was a long time before we could get real infrastructure and things in. And even before you're bringing in the physical supplies, there's a whole process. You now have FEMA and the federal government coming in, and there are layers upon layers of things that have to be worked out. And I'm sorry, I work with the government every day. They are not organized. They do not talk together. They are completely separate in their own silos and their own agendas. And things from just as hauling all of your debris and the remnants of your properties and houses to the street and getting the trash cleaned up is a whole process in itself. And to get the contractors who are actually going to get paid to then haul away your trash, that's a whole process in and of itself. From dealing with FEMA and SBA and insurance, you're talking months, if not years. And like you guys said, way too many people on the island have had to go to lawsuits because of insurance companies not doing what we paid our premiums for them to do. But I'll let you guys take the construction aspect of that too.
Well, one of the things I want to elaborate on when you were talking about, you taking your garbage out to the curb and stuff like that. But this wasn't garbage. This was half of your house. This is your neighbor's house that is now on your property, which is now your responsibility. It's not just, I'm going to go take, 10 trash bags full of garbage because I had 7.5 feet of water in the house and a couple of couches out. No, you're talking drywall. You're talking electric. You're talking people's houses and boat docks are literally, there's boats and cars could be in your yard. It's a whole gamut when it comes to a hurricane, especially the Cat 5 that we had. But, it took months and months to do. It finally got done. And, we just hope nothing like this ever happens again, because it'll be really detriment to the island. On what?
They were asking about the rebuild,
Oh,
the rebuilding process.
our rebuilding process. Our rebuilding process, within a week or two after Hurricane Ian, there was a building called Wahoo Willie's. It was just built. They did a soft opening for 1 week, and Hurricane Ian wiped it out. Now, it got wiped out, but the building was still standing. Even the palm fronds on their tiki hut was still on. And I remember the name Fowler Construction. And I called him the moment I had internet access or phone access, and it was like, okay, we want to hire you, and let's get the plans together. Let's get started. And my ultimate goal is to be able to do a soft opening on September 28th, the day of the hurricane of this year. We're that close.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about how feeling and being invested in your community unfolded a little bit differently than just a cold, the numbers work, the numbers don't work. How did that motivate you? And as a couple, how did you look at that and decide this is what we're going to do? What did that look like?
Well, it's probably more me than him, but honestly, like I said, the resiliency that I know that we both have, but we divide and conquer, and where he kind of slacks on some stuff, I come around, So he was in the vision of how can we get rebuilt, and I was in the vision of how can we open right now. So then in that process, we opened under a tent for almost a year, and I don't want to say we made a ton of money, but we had a couple of profitable days there. But it was more for the benefit of the public and everything. But the feeling that the community gave back to us for doing what we did is so empowering. So that's what I got to say about that. Yeah.
So basically what we did is we offset our losses.
That is really something. Now, Dawn, you mentioned something just almost in passing, but I don't want it to go unaddressed because it's important. Is as you are developing and rebuilding your business, this isn't just you. Now, we're doing a podcast here and it's just you two talking about this business, but your business employs a lot of people. This is an economic engine. This impacts other people's lives, and this impacts, I would believe anyways, the spirit of, hey, if the Millers are doing this, they're moving forward, they're rebuilding. Tell me a little bit about what you saw in the community and the impact that actually doing business actually gives to the community. A lot of times people think, oh, it's those business owners, they're just taking everything. You all are here paying people to come build, to work at your place. You're providing some break for people to go and say, you know what? Let's just stop shoveling sand here for a minute and go down to, even if it's a tent, and let's hang out. I want you to kind of talk about that secondary impact of real estate investing and your decision to move forward and literally rebuilding from a disaster.
Well, one thing is to my understanding right now, after almost 3 years, there aren't a lot of people that can actually afford to rebuild. We're very fortunate that we can, and we're going to be one of the first full-blown commercial buildings built on the island. We first broke ground, and the beach bar, who's on the beach, they just opened recently. They got a ground floor bar, and which they got a huge. They did, matter of fact, 4th of July, 10:30 in the morning. They did a ribbon cutting ceremony, and the outpour of the community was amazing. There's a ton of people there, a ton of people supporting, and that's what it's all about. Is we're always going to have we're a tourist destination facility, but if you look, the nuts and bolts of the entire island is the locals. And catering to the locals and giving them some options to go to when they're down and out and have nothing. And some people, are still living in trailers that they haven't gotten their insurance money from the insurance companies yet.
Well, I'll take it over from there, because I do want to point out one thing is that when we went through the town, trying to get our permitting and building the wheel, there were a lot of things that we needed, variances on our property, that none of the businesses on the island believed that we would get through. And we did. And so one of the big ones was our parking variance. And as soon as we were able to pass through the council, it gave some of those other small businesses that didn't have a path forward with any parking the motivation to come back around and go, well, the Millers did it with the whale. Maybe I can do it. So, and that's when we saw, what was it? The Salty Crab is doing it. And then, of course, the Cottage Bar and Shuckers. They've all now found that path forward. And so I felt like that we did that for the community as well.
I want to elaborate on the parking real quick. This is a classic. So we were at the town council, and they came up and they're like, you need to come up when you come back in a month. You need to come in and you need 57 more parking spots. I'm like, well, where am I going to get 57 more parking spots? I've got 18. I'm like, this isn't going to happen. So I got creative in my mind, and when I went back, what I did is I took a 500-foot radius of the whale, and I added up how many what I called non-exclusive parking spots. There were 911 of them within 500 feet of the whale. So basically, I have 911 non-exclusive parking spots. They're all paid parking, but hey, you know what? You can park there and come to the whale. I got all this parking now. They were set back going, wow. Okay, it's a new term.
Well, that's awesome, because there are certain communities, I'm not going to call them out, but who are struggling through disasters and rebuilding, and they are not as resilient and creative. Disasters that happen and they've just still got nothing, just straight up empty lots. And here we are 3 years later, and they still haven't figured out where to put the trash. They're just barely clearing stuff out. And you're looking at a soft opening. Well, you have already opened, but you're looking at doing an opening sooner than later and clearing a path for others and inspiring other people. But I have word that that's not the only thing. Like, you didn't stop there. It wasn't just a business of, well, let's re-up the whale. Sounds like you got some other things cooking in Fort Myers Beach. What's up with that? I am co-host of this podcast because education is my calling. That's also why I developed a course on short-term rentals. It's called STR in an Hour, and it's perfect for busy professionals. It's a lot of content packed into 1 hour. No fluff, no upsell. It's an overview of STRs from A to Z. Everything from how to choose a property to how to estimate income and expenses. It's literally the best and most content I could pack into 59 minutes. With over 4,000 nightly stays in my own STRs, I've learned important lessons, and I want to share them with you. Link with more information in the show notes.
Well, we purchased the old Tuckaway Cafe Royal Scoop building after the hurricane, and that's going to be Sandy Bottom's Bar and Grill. We intend on putting a 4,000 square foot tiki hut in front of it. Then, 5-6 months ago, we bought the old fire department, Station 31, off of the fire department, and that's going to be Station 31 Pizzas and Subs. And so we're just we're trying to acquire commercial property that that's still standing, and be able to get it fixed up, and because we love the small feel of Fort Myers Beach, and we know the topography is going to be changing now. But if we can keep any of those small little buildings still alive, it just means it means a lot to the community and a lot to us. So like we're leaving a legacy for future people to be able to see, hey, this community is still small but new.
I'll add that my passion around all of these projects is to also include the arts, which the island has always been, it's been important to the island. So at Station 31, what we're going to do is we're going to reface the whole building in brick, and we're going to have red garage doors so that it looks like a classic old firehouse. We're hopeful to get an artist to paint like these fire truck, like it's coming out of the building. And so we just want to keep everything fun and, much like the community residents.
Yeah. So I want to step back and talk about the whole thing. You've got another food establishment, 2 actually, headed into 3 here, if I understand it right, that these things, this rebuilding process is crucial for the local economy. It's important for the local spirit to feel like, hey, we're doing this. Talk to people who might be on the fence. They think, I don't know, could I really be the kind of person, and this is for you too, Kristi, but we'll let the Millers go first, is people who think, I don't know, should I be a rebuilder? Because there's a little bit of a stigma of as soon as a disaster comes through and people want to come through and rebuild, there's this stigma of like, oh yeah, they're just coming in to just grab all this cash that's just laying around. Based on the story that you're telling me, you're spending a lot more cash than you're just scooping up. And what this means to the local community to actually redevelop instead of wallow in the sorrow. And so I was down in Florida after Hurricane Andrew, and I saw things and went out to places that were just absolutely wiped out. And it's sad and it's tragic. And no matter when this episode airs, there has probably been another tragedy somewhere of something that happens. So the temptation is just to stay in victim mode, like, oh, this is all terrible. I want you to both, Kristi and Mike and Dawn, kind of take me through what it means for the community and for someone who could be the one to do the work, to help, to rebuild, versus just like, oh, well, that's just tragic. Let's just leave it and walk away.
Well, it would really help a lot. I've got a skid steer sitting on my vacant lot next door. I would love to find out where that pile of money is I can scoop up because it would be awesome right now. But you gotta, at the end of the day, wallowing in misery it's not what we do, and it's not what anyone should do. There are going to be people that obviously can't afford to rebuild. Right now, there's a lot of places for sale on the island right now. I mean, more than I've ever seen in my life. I'll give you a quick idea. There was less than 20 homes for sale. Now, I'm not talking vacant lots or condos. I'm talking single family homes. They're under 20 for sale before Hurricane Ian. There's approximately between 160 and 180 for sale right now. And those are just single family homes. They're not duplexes. They're not the vacant lots. They're not the condos. They're tipping almost 700 properties for sale on the island right now. And one of the things I wanted to mention to you was, go back a second, when you were mentioning about when the storm came. Well, not only, there was a power out, but for the safety reasons, FPL, Floral Power and Lighting, came on the island and pulled over 3,000 meters. They pulled every electric meter off of every building on this island, every one of them. Then you had to get an engineer to say that your building was safe, that you put a new meter box in, and then they would come out and install your meter and get you power. But, going back to the rebuilding, and it's unfortunate some people can't. Dawn and I are working on putting a little program together. If it works out, we're going to be able to help a lot of small businesses rebuild. We got a quasi plan in place. We just got to get something done before we can do that. And it's not the whale, it's just another property. And so we're really looking forward to helping all these smaller businesses be able to rebuild and get back in as soon as they can, because we're coming up on 3 years right now. And we don't want it to be another 3 years. We want people getting in these places in maybe the next 12 months. But right now there's no construction being built, and I think it's a big waiting game right now for people. They just don't know what they want to do, or they can't build. And I just encourage them, in real estate, no risk, no reward. It's the way it is. It's the way it always is. You just got to make a decision, pull the trigger, and wish for the best.
I want to add to that, though, is kind of in that direction. Mike and I are very resilient people. After every storm, and we were heavily affected, but not only just a random storm in like mid-December of 23, but then we had Debbie and Idalia and all of these. They've all affected us in some way. But our tent was destroyed at the Whale during that December storm of 23, and before we even knew that the tent needed work, the neighbors and our friends on the island were there putting it back together. So the island breeds people that want to keep going, and you do what you can do. So I wanted to point that out.
That's awesome. So Kristi, to you, the name of your mentoring group here is Local Real Estate Developers. Why local? Why is that just different than, hey, big multinational can roll in? Why not Blackstone? What do locals have that these large, and I'm not throwing shade at them, but these large companies just don't have or can't do? I mean, we've heard from the Millers that their heart is in this for the community. It's not a cash play, because if that were it, that's probably a bad idea. But there's something more to this. What is it that locals can bring to development, or in this case, redevelopment, that is their superpower?
Yeah, and it was actually Hurricane Ian that on the path to recovery of just, getting our homes back and seeing what the island was going through and realizing that our cute, quaint island that we had is no more. And that, the minute the old RV park sold for $55 million, just the dirt, and you saw the big developers coming in, and we're like, wait, we're losing our island. And yet, having been a real estate developer, I understand that we can be the ones doing it. We can actually be the ones taking over. So when I heard that you guys were rebuilding, I'm like, yes, this is it. And then when you snatched up a couple more, one of my other favorite breakfast places, I'm like, oh, good, because I remember talking to that owner and he was like, I'm just done. I'm out of here. And so just the power of locals being the developers in our community is we know what we want. You've been coming here your whole life. We know where we want to live, work, and play. We have community. And every storm, which we keep getting them, we get better and better at it. And sometimes the days are long, but if you just see one person out there doing one thing that gives you a little bit of hope, that's all you need to get the energy to get through that day. And it's just baby steps forward in that sense of community pride and belonging. And we're all in this together. We'll rally around things like soft opening on the 28th. Count me in. Like we'll be there. We'll bring all the people. We were there the Saturday before Ian, and we were so excited. I'm like, yay, a Buckeye bar. But it's the community and the camaraderie that you build around that we're not going to support the big corporation stuff like that. That's just not going to happen. We're going to go there and go, oh, great, I had a nice 5-star meal. Great, thanks, Naples Jr. But when we go to yours, it's placemaking and it's gathering and it's getting to support our locals to where, the fact, I think, what are you guys going to employ like 75 people, like something between all the businesses, and you've got GMs and the management. So like that's where we build our deeper roots and we come together and support. So to me, that's the whole point. I've done the developments in the primary markets, but my heart and my passion are behind our locals doing it because it's all about relationships, connection, collaborations, and doing things as a community.
So I want you, kind of as we wrap down here, as we wind down, I want you to talk to me about opening day. How does the vision of that opening day and what that means to you, to your community, to your employees, what is that like? How does that motivate you? Tell me about that.
I'm going to start with one word: chaos. It's going to be chaos. But we got a good GM, we got a great chef. We're going to be starting to hire here shortly. Matter of fact, our GM, he has still been on payroll since Hurricane Ian. We have never not paid him. And just to, wanted to help him out. And he's, we're going through things, getting details worked out on everything. And we kept him on board because we just felt we felt an obligation to, because, we had just brought him on board, 3 months before the hurricane, right when we took over the property. He came on board with me to help get this place working. So, what it means to us is, it's just going to be an overwhelm of joy, being able to see, I know we go out now and there's, we see a lot of the locals out at the pubs and the restaurants, but seeing them back at the whale, and we're trying to bring some of the old whale and tie in the new whale together, similar bar, whatever it may be. And just the whale's going to be a destination place. We've got the stairwells being, painted by artists. We've got a lot of hidden innuendos all over the place that are going to be interesting. And literally, you're going to want to come, and whoever comes visits, and again, even if you come visit for a week at Fort Myers Beach, you're not going to come to the whale every day. You're not going to go eat at Margaritaville every day. You're going to go and explore the island. That's what we want. We want, people don't need to be here every day at our facility or at Margaritaville. Just get the tourists down here and let them explore the place. And, and the more things are built, the more people are going to want to come and make it a yearly event again.
All right, so I'll take over from there and just say that our, the soft opening, it's going to be amazing and great. And it's going to be all about the whale and getting our residents back there. But I will say that our grand opening party, while it's about the whale, it's more a gift back to our community on how proud we are sorry, it's going to make me cry, but how proud we are to be these people. So everybody on the island is going to be real happy when they hear what we got planned.
That's awesome. Well, your story is amazing, and it's perfect for the Real Estate Pessimist podcast because not everything is always sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns. If you're in it long enough, somewhere, somehow, a disaster is going to get you. And we can call it a black swan and say, like, oh, who could have thought of that? But guess what? Governments change things. Weather changes things. Consumer behavior changes. Like, what in the world? What were you guys? Things change. And that old book, Who Moved My Cheese? The cheese keeps moving, right? And y'all have been through literally the storm, but are not pessimists. And we're not either. And you have to have that vision of opening day, what it means to the community to keep moving forward, because this is not easy. If you're a beginning investor and you've heard like, oh, you buy insurance and if something goes wrong, they just write you a check. Wow, you need to talk to people who've been in the game longer, because it just does not work like that. I don't want to say that it's worthless, because that's not true either, but it's not easy. It's not easy. And if it's not easy for you and you're struggling through something, guess what? That's how it is. That is just how it is. It's not just you. So thank you so much for sharing your vision, your story, your optimism for the future, and what you all are doing to give back to the community. If somebody wants to check you out, do you all have some social media accounts that you would steer them towards, or a website, or how can they follow?
That's all
Because this
her.
place sounds amazing.
Yeah. All right. So I was hacked. My Facebook was hacked for a bit, and I was hopeful to get it back. It was about almost to the year mark of Ian. And so when I came back on Facebook, I came back as Beachy D. Miller, because I thought Dawn Miller's coming back. Well, I didn't get it back. So now if you look me up, I think you have to find Beachy D to find Dawn Miller, but I've renamed it. That was just my temporary name. But at any rate, I am on Facebook, and I'm trying to learn Instagram and all of that. And of course, we have the Whale FMB website, and people can find us there too. So
What's our Facebook page
Excellent.
on that?
well, the Whale FMB, Sandy Bottoms FMB, Station 31 FMB. Of course, none of those are fully open yet, so we're getting there.
Fair. And by the way, for the uninitiated, because in talking with Kristi for a while, I was like, FMB, F like Fort, M like Myers, and B like beach. That's what the FMB is about. It took me a little bit longer than I wanted it to, actually, if I have to admit that, to figure that out. But that's what it is. And if you haven't been to a local restaurant establishment like that, it's not the same. It is so not the same as your McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's. And that's what makes them special. You walk in and you could go there. There's a place in Maui that I go to, Fred's. I don't know how many times I've been to Fred's Mexican place, and I still haven't even seen half of the stuff that's on the walls, on the ceilings. It's just stuff everywhere, because it's got character, right? And as I hear you talking about your place, it's character. This isn't just about how many burgers did we sell today. It's how many people did we delight. And I love that you've got that heart as developers, and that those who are listening gain inspiration from you and can pick up the ball wherever they are, because things happen, and they happen all over the place. Maybe it's on a smaller scale. There was a fire, or somebody moved out, or there was a small disaster. You can step into the gap. That can be you. It was Mike and Dawn. This wasn't their ambition, 10 years ago, was to do this, but here they are stepping up and leading in their community. Kristi, anything else as we head out?
Just thank you guys so much for providing us with the hope to keep pushing forward ourselves, and for what you're doing for the island and for all of our neighbors. So just thank you. And I'm so grateful that we get to share your story.
Well,
Yes.
glad to be on. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where I hope you figured out we're not pessimists, but we're trying to tell the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. And sometimes the truth is storms happen. Please share this with a friend. Leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us. Bye.